In Search of the Source, Chapter 20. Hate your brother. That's good, they said. That's really good. They always liked to encourage me after a translation session, but this time I sensed a but coming. We'd been working on Luke. Jesus was at the height of his popularity. Large crowds followed him with enthusiasm. Though some were not genuine, or were not thinking about any costs. At one point he turned and said, "If anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, his wife and his children, his brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple." Luke 14:26. We translated that into good Philippa, and the men were giving their approval. "That's good," they said, "but there's one little thing you've got to change. It's just a small thing, just a word. Everything else is good. You don't need to change anything else, but there's one thing you've got to change." "All right," I said. "What part is that?" They smiled a little. "Well, the meaning is mixed up. The way you translated it there, it says, unless a person hates his father, mother, wife, children, and all, he cannot be my disciple." "Yes," I said, "but what you should have said is, if a person hates, he cannot be my disciple." I suppose I should have seen it coming, but I hadn't. I could see what they meant. They knew enough about the gospel at this point to know that love is the key, not hate. The basic value of love, or at least that of supreme loyalty, is not new to them. Clan ties and family ties are stronger than superglue in these parts, and so they have always been. The brother-brother relationship is very tight in all Philippa culture. The same carries over into other relationships, where certain cousins are bound together as if they were brothers. Each of these special relationships involves strict expectations and obligations. One does not get angry with his brother, for example. Rather, he promotes harmony and always seeks peace. He always shares food and possessions with his brothers. He is available to help whenever he's needed in hunting or gardening or house building. He makes the marriage proposal for his brother's chosen bride, and he leads the hunting trips to get game for the bride price. In a fight, he holds his brother back from doing bodily harm to another. When a man dies, his brother will show the greatest empathy with grief and anger. He won't rest until he has personally learned the cause of death, like who did the sorcery, and has seen that the revenge is taken. He will mourn his clan brother's death for at least a year. For each of the family relationships, there are expectations, established since before anyone can ever remember. Each has its role, and breaking it means violating an unwritten code. All this was the background into which Jesus was making his statement about counting the cost. "Yes, you're right," I said. "Of course you can't be a disciple if you're going to hate someone." "I know it and you know it. But the trouble is, this is what the Lord really said. Unless you hate your father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, you cannot be my disciple." We did not translate it wrong. They looked at me. I looked at them, and none of us knew quite what to do next. They were convinced that I had made an error. Correcting it would have been easy, involving only a small change in the Philippa from Hanitepa, if you do not hate, to make it Hotepa, if you hate. They were sure I was wrong, and I knew they would not be ready to go on until I fixed it. I opened a metaphysical dialogue that lasted for 2 days, the kind of conversation that can be stimulating or frustrating in any company. Though it was a long struggle, I finally managed to convince them that language problems were not the issue in this case. Jesus really had said it as we translated it. But he didn't mean what they thought he meant when he said it. But then, exactly what did he mean? They asked. Well, it doesn't mean that we're supposed to hate people, I told them. And it certainly doesn't mean that if we hate people enough, then we can be disciples. But that's what you're saying, it says, they answered. It was difficult. Looking for a way to explain it, I referred to all the commentaries and translators' handbooks I had at hand. As always, I worked at the exegesis, trying to get at the meaning of the original statement in the original context. Any sort of diluting it down wouldn't work. Saying things like, you've got to love these relatives and clansmen just a little bit, or not quite as much as God, wouldn't do. It kept coming out like, if you can just dislike people a little bit, then you can be my disciple. Nothing was making sense. During those days, the village was embroiled in a court case with the people of Wopasale. A man from the Fukatau area had died. He'd been having health problems, and when he became very ill, men from the village had taken him down to the clinic at Wopasale. But since he was beyond any help they could give him in the clinic, the medical workers arranged a flight to Mendi. That 15-minute trip by air saved 20 days by foot, which the man never would have survived. The expenses were picked up by the government, as is done in such cases. So was the operation. The doctor at Mendi performed a colonoscopy, but it all happened too late. The man died at the hospital. As per the people's custom, the man's body was returned to his home, first via plane, then by stretcher pole for the day's steep walk up from the airstrip at Wopasale. At least, said one of these who'd been with him in the hospital, he died peacefully. But it wasn't enough for his sons. They couldn't leave it at that. They had responsibilities to perform. They had to know who'd killed him. Conveniently, the shaman lived right in the same longhouse. They went to him to get the bete of the matter. As a shaman won't stay in business if he doesn't know the answer to these things, he did his divining and found out who was responsible. The answer? It was a person in Wopasale who had done it, and it was done by poison. Whether it was actual poison or some non-physical occultic substance didn't matter. What mattered was that a guilty party was identified and vengeance must be performed. Courts in rural areas of Papua New Guinea are composed of village leaders called councilmen, selected by the villagers and approved by the national government. One respected man from each of several villages comprised the court, and the presiding judge being that one with the least bias in a particular case. Do you know what bias means? It's like, if there was an argument between someone from our family and someone from another's family, our bias will be towards our family, towards the people that we love, the people we care about. You almost always have a bias. You are inclined to think favorably towards one side or the other. Yeah. These courts understand their own culture, and when a case comes before them that involves murder by poison or sorcery, it's not taken lightly. Circumstantial evidence is brought forth. Possible motives are evaluated. In this case, a statement was sought from the doctor in Mendi. When they asked him, he said he'd done what he could. He had performed an operation. The sick man's health had improved for a while, but the problem was worse than that. He said he'd given medicine, but the disease proved stronger than the medicine. That wasn't good enough for the court, at least not for the accusers. One of these wanted the doctor to sign a statement saying the death was caused by poison. The doctor would not do that, and the case continued to gather heat. Back in Fukatau, some of the men were getting their weapons out, even their spears, a sign of real business. It was during this time that they were debating that one verse. It's not that Jesus wants us to not love anyone. I was still explaining. He wants us to love everyone. Yes, they all agreed with that. Basically, what he was saying that when it comes down to a contest of allegiance, God must win. When things come to an issue of who is going to have the final word in my life, my closest kinsman or God, it always has to be God. They nodded. Jesus said it the way he did it, with those particular words. Because there will be times when, because of what you're doing, it will appear in the eyes of your family and clansmen that you hate them. That will happen because you'll be doing what God wants, not what they want. Finally, Wahiri spoke with clarity we'd been searching for. Jesus, he said, was not saying we're supposed to hate our family or our clansmen or anyone else. In following him, there would be times when we act in such a way that they think that, because we follow God's will instead of theirs, we must hate them. He said that with the clearest philoppa that could be uttered. The men around looked at each other, and it seemed like, finally, the clouds were breaking up. But they were heavy clouds indeed. These were issues in the very chords of society. Could a society last with such truths? Brothers were to stand for brothers, right or wrong. Yet, was that always right? The system as it stood was always full of turmoil, that was sure, but to go against it was to go against everything. Wasn't there an easier way to be a disciple? It's another bete, Wayuri said. It's the bete of being a disciple. It goes against what we've always held as the bete. Talk of the battle continued to build outside. The men in the Bible house, though most of them were Christians, were expected to take part like everyone else. That's what clans are for. That day, when all the men walked out, Wahiri stayed a few more minutes. I could see he was deep in thought. Finally, he said, "Do I go?" "Do you go where?" "With the men," he said, "to Wopasale." "Do you believe the word of the shaman?" I asked. "No." "Did the man die of sorcery?" "I don't know," he added. "No, the shaman works for the devil. He hates the talk. He works against it. If I go, I'll only justify him." "Well?" "But the man who died was my clan brother. If I don't go, what will they think? That I don't love him? That I didn't love him? That I don't care about his death? They might even conclude that if I don't get involved, I must have had a part in it." He picked up the sheaf of papers we'd just been working on and read, "Unless a person hates his brother." His mouth thinned and his eyes glazed a bit. "I have to go," he said. "Maybe I'll just not take my weapons, and then they'll think I'm a weakling. What can I do?" I just looked at him. This battle had to be his. In the end, he went. I heard later that there had been a big show of force with lots of emotions. They were after justice, and they would show their anger until they got it, but nothing happened. When they came the next day, I asked Wahiri how it went. "Bad," he said. "The court went bad." "How?" "Nothing happened. It broke up. A council from another village came in and said there wasn't enough evidence. He told everyone to go home." "So that's the end of it?" "Yes." He paused. He didn't look very happy. "What is it?" I asked. "The whole thing was wrong in the first place," he said. "We should never have taken the shaman's advice. It's from the wrong source. He keeps us running in circles, never settled, always angry." "I went down there," he said, "but I didn't take my weapons. I thought maybe I could be a peacemaker, but I wasn't. Nobody was. The whole thing failed. On the way back, everybody was miserable, and they liked me least of all." "Why?" "You know, because I wasn't really with them." "I suppose they'll get over it," I said. "I suppose, but that's not the worst." "No? What's the worst?" "It's like what the Lord said. You can't do both. You can't compromise. It's got to be one or the other."